Hi everybody! It's a rainy Saturday here, so I am throwing some color into dye pots, and I figured I'd pop on because I'm doing the Wool and Fiber Arts Facebook sale at the end of the month, and there's an amazing colorway that has been chosen for the live, for the dye along. So I'm just going to show you how I put color on my pots. I'm an intuitive dyer, so even when I use the same colors, it always turns out a little bit differently. So my dye studio is actually used to be, still is, it's a bathroom in my studio. So I do small dye pots in this triple crock pot. So let's see if I can switch around. Here we go. So this is the pot that I'm doing right now, and really the way that I dye, it's about knowing and being comfortable with the color wheel, because then you know how colors blend together. I think that when you're starting as an intuitive dyer, to really play with the color wheel and start with fewer colors together so that you can see how they work and then add more. I think that you can totally someone just texted me. You can totally mix dye brands. Right now I am using a lot of Prochem and Dharma. When you are starting with a new dye brand and you don't know quite as many, when things break, I'm all about using your break as opposed to being afraid of the break. So if you're using a new brand of dye and you don't know how it breaks, or you don't know if a color breaks, put that color in alone and add the acid and watch what happens to it. And then you can build your colorway around that. So I'm doing our Wool and Fiber Arts Facebook group colorway. You see, I use chopsticks. The more movement you want, the more water you use. This is sort of a cross between immersion dyeing, kettle dyeing. This is a low immersion, really. The most important thing to play with when you're dyeing and intuitive dyeing, the two things you need for your dye to set is heat and acid. So how hot your water is and when you add your acid will all determine or affect how your color moves in the pot. So if you don't want a lot of blending, then you want to have your acid and your heat be all there when you add your dye, because then the color will strike right away. If you want some movement, sorry as I move my phone and open the dye pots, the more movement you want, then the more varying you let those two properties to be. So my pots here are at temperature, but I don't yet have the acid in the pots. So I'm giving the dye time to move through the pot, move through the fiber. If you are adding dye to water that's at temperature and already has acid in it, you may find you have more white spots because the dye doesn't have time to travel through the fiber before it strikes. So the more movement you want, the more blending you want, then you can have your dye pot to temperature like mine and determine how, just kind of watch what happens and add the acid when you see things striking to your liking. Oops, sorry. So here's sort of the base of the colorway. Oops. Now, you see I'm poking. You don't want to poke too much. Heat and agitation will felt your fiber. And these are also really nice curls, so I don't want them to be too... Now, you'll see this water is really dirty because actually these are really nice curls that were very clean. And so I just threw them right into the dye pot with a little bit of soap without actually washing them first. So this is a farmer I get lots of wool from. Sorry. And so I know his fleeces are very clean. We'll see. This is the first pots from these new fleeces I'm doing. So it's kind of an experiment. They might need a soak before I actually dye them. But so if these come out and they're still a little dirty, then I can wash the locks one more time. But if you think about, I have curly hair. So the more I wash my hair, the frizzier it gets. So the same with locks. The more you do to them, the bigger chance you have for them to get a little fussy. Okay. So I want there to be a little bit more orange here. Then once I see the color start to set, I'll turn the locks over to see if I have any white spots. So this pot I already added acid to, so I can actually turn it off now. This pot needs some acid, which I just use citric acid. Probably use too much, but I just throw a tablespoon on. This has been going a minute. This is actually a chili powder. Oop. With saffron. This was teal, but mixed with the saffron, I wanted this cool olive green. Some brown. It's going to be a really nice autumn colorway. And then here's our woolen fiber arts. Okay. Put some acid on that. I tend to acid higher on the colors that are harder to exhaust. And then I just turn my pots off. So as this cools, it's at temperature, and when it comes down, it will set the fiber. Before it gets totally cool, I'm going to come back, flip the fiber over, see what it looks like on the other side. This is when you can see if your colors have broken. Sometimes the colors break as they're traveling through the fiber. And that's when you can really play with the breaks. You can add some other colors, just knowing how things blend. Because if you're adding color on top and it's going to travel through, in the middle you're going to have some blending. So again, the color wheel is going to be really something that you play with. I really love Deb Menz's book, Color Works. It's a great color theory book, and we can totally do Zoom things on color too. I just kind of I sprinkle it on top, let it sit, because the more you push, the more color moves. I'll come back and kind of push it down, but when it's in the water, so it'll come down and, sorry, it's relatively early. I've only had 1 cup of coffee at this point. It'll spread through the water. So this will stay up, and I'll show you guys what this looks like. It's kind of a rainy day. So when I flip these over, I'll come back and show you what it looks like. Happy Saturday.